So hello, this is BSJ, and this video is going to be all you can know about Dark Pact. I'm going to be doing this for each individual skill on Slark. For little do people know, but I think Slark is one of the most complex heroes in terms of the way his abilities work and how they should be used. Like, the way they come off may be really straightforward, but people just use them incorrectly. And I'm here to tell you specifically what abilities are used for and how to use them to ensure you are playing the most optimal as possible on Slark. So, leading with Dark Pact here, we're going to talk about it. So it is an ability that scales in cooldown, meaning every level it loses 1 second. It loses 5 mana cost, meaning that it goes from 55, then 50, then 45, then 40, and it goes up 75 damage per level. That's just really good overall scaling. The reason why you max it first almost every single game. It goes down in mana, goes down in cooldown, and it goes up in damage. And it does half the damage to Slark himself. So obviously that's pretty basic for most of you who have played Slark at all. It serves as a strong dispel. So what that means is that it's one of the strongest dispels in the game. The only things that cannot be dispelled are things that literally cannot be dispelled by anything. So first off, we're going to lead off with mechanics in Dota that cannot be dispelled. So first off is Kunkka X, cannot be dispelled by Slark's Dark Pact. Omni Knight Aura cannot be dispelled. Legion Commander Duel cannot be dispelled. Axe Call cannot be dispelled. Spearbreaker Charge cannot be dispelled. Doom cannot be dispelled. Undying's Decay cannot be dispelled. Ricky's Cloud cannot be dispelled. Naga Sleep cannot be dispelled because it is continuously applied. Bloodseeker Rupture cannot be dispelled. Razor Static Link cannot be dispelled. Venomancer Ult, as well as Venomancer Passive, that deals the damage over time, cannot be dispelled, as well as the slow. Viper Ultimate cannot be dispelled. Void Chrono cannot be dispelled. Terrorblade Reflection, the slow, attack speed, and move speed can be removed, but the illusion itself cannot. Disruptor Static Storm cannot be dispelled, as well as Glimpse from Disruptor. Windranger Windrun Slow cannot be dispelled. Enigma Black Hole can also not be dispelled. Necro Ultimate cannot be dispelled. Death Prophet's Soul Siphon cannot be dispelled. Witch Doctor Maledict cannot be dispelled. Ancient Apparition Ultimate cannot be dispelled. Invoker Deafening Blast, a very major one, cannot be dispelled. Basically, in my opinion, that makes it that you have to buy BKB on Slark against Invoker every single time because of Deafening Blast not being able to be dispelled. OD Astral Imprison cannot be dispelled. Shadow Demon Disruption cannot be dispelled, neither can his ultimate from Shadow Demon. And Winter Wyvern ulti can also not be dispelled. I believe I caught everything with that description of what cannot be dispelled by Pact. And literally the way I want you to approach it is everything else in the game can be dispelled. I might have missed a few like lingering things such as sniper, shrapnel if you're inside of it. Anything that's like continuously applied cannot be dispelled because it will just be applied to you again. And also I did miss Bristleback's quill spray stacks. Those cannot be dispelled by anything as well. And also Huskar's burning spears. So basically what it means that it cannot be dispelled is, in general, I like to think of those things as counters to Slark. Like, not always, but generally the more devastating they are and the lower cooldown they are makes it worse, right? Is the worse and worse. And people may be like, well, you know, BSJ, nobody can do anything to get out of Axe Call, or any hero dies in a duel, stuff like that. But the fact is that Slark heavily relies on being able to dispel stuff. That's one of his 4 abilities. So to take away one of his abilities entirely with a hero usually means that they're a strong counter to Slark. So, you know, Axe is probably, in my opinion, one of the hardest heroes to deal with as Slark, because of the fact that you cannot dispel his call, which is a 3.2 second BKB piercing 10-second cooldown stun, right? That goes in an AoE that can like call you during your ultimate as well. It hits you during your ult. So that's like really annoying for Slark and stuff like that. And that's like the main thing to think about when pacting is like, how much does Pact offer me in a game? Like, what on the other team can I not pact? And like that makes the way you play the game have to be completely different. Like a lot of games where none of these heroes are on the enemy team, you can like farm creep waves as long as you're pacting. But like the minute that you're against a hero that you cannot pack their stuff off, if you're farming a creep wave, you're immediately in danger if that hero's missing. So it's really important to like know these heroes and know, like, you know, gauge, like, will I die in a Faceless Void Chrono? Or like, you know, will I be able to escape if I get ruptured by a Bloodseeker? Because part of Slark is like, you know, coordinating his other abilities into the description is like knowing that they can't see you. And that's something I've talked about in my previous guides. So with Dark Pact, the fact is, if they can see you, that's what Dark Pact is for. So if I'm ever running around a Shadow Blade or running around and I don't see them, and suddenly I'm in vision, something I'm always monitoring my ult, suddenly I'm in vision. Almost every game, I need to know for myself what is my first reaction. And so the first step on that, you know, totem pole of what I would do in like if like my checklist, I guess you could say. First step would be, will Pact work? Will Pact be enough? In some games, if you just immediately Pact, that's enough because they have nothing that pierces your Pact. And that's a great thing to do. That's immediate, like the best thing. If it is a viable option, that is the best option, because what Pact is it has a 1.5 delay. 1.5 second delay. What that means is the minute you trigger it, 1.5 seconds later, you actually start to pact. So if you pact right away when you're vulnerable, meaning like you're in vision around the map, that gives you 1.5 seconds before you even start pacting, and then in 1 second that the pact is actually going off. So basically 2.5 seconds to like reevaluate. And it's also the lowest cooldown out of all your options, right? It's only 6 seconds. So like if you pact immediately and it's a viable option, meaning like there's nothing that goes through pact, and that's like one of the most amazing uses of pact, is that it serves as a way to give yourself 2.5 seconds to basically gauge what the hell is going on around you. So that's like really how I look at it in the mid game, and that's like how you threat analysis as a Slark. That's one of the most key components. In games where pact is not enough, that's when it gets much more creative, and that's what we'll concern ourselves with when we talk about the other abilities specifically in my other videos here on Game Leap. So what we're going to talk about with pacting is that what it offers Slark overall. This is probably the most important thing that people don't realize. So first off, it removes stuns, right? It serves as a survivability tool. Second off, it serves as farming, right? It gives him a 300 damage nuke on low mana, low cooldown, no cast animation. That's like a big part of it. It doesn't delay him at all to use Pact, so he can use Pact while he's running around kind of thing. So it doesn't limit his mobility and movement at all. So that's really nice. And then the next step that most people don't even think about in the early game especially, it applies at all stages of the game, but it's one of his most like heavy damage outputs, right? It's a 6-second cooldown, 300 damage nuke. So a lot of people don't utilize it for damage. They try to trade with their other abilities. And in the laning stage, the fact is, the minute you hit level 6, you're going to regen all your health back over time, at least a lot faster than the enemy is. So Pact serves as a great way to trade. That's how I look at it in the laning stage. I use it to control lane equilibrium, meaning if I want the lane to push, I will pack the wave down. It's the most efficient way to do it as Slark. If I want to push-pull, where I like stack at 53 and, you know, clear the big camp, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll use it for. If I want to trade damage with the enemy hero, it does half damage to me compared to them. Especially if I'm level 6 or 7, I'm going to use Pact in order to harass. A lot of people use Pounce to harass. That is absolutely wrong in the laning stage. And that's what we're looking at with Pact. Most kills I have, you know, if I had to portray them utilizing Pact, is that I Pact first, hit the guy twice, pounce them such that by the end of my pounce, I will have Pact once again. The end of my pact, let's think about it this way. Your pact ends 2.5 seconds in. If I have level 4 pact, it's now 3.5 seconds until I have my dark pact up again. And guess what? The duration of his pounce is 3.5 seconds. So if you wait till the end of pact in an ideal world to pounce somebody, by the end of that pounce, you'll have pact again. And that's how a lot of my kills are in the laning stage. And a lot of people lead kills off or like harass attempts with pounce. But you have to think that pact commits nothing more than just pushing a button, no cast animation, you still have escapes. And as long as they don't have like chain stuns to kill you instantly in whatever lane you're in, then you have a lot of options. So that's like the best part about Pact. It lets you choose after 2.5 seconds, what am I doing? Is this a good trade? Is this a bad trade? Am I wanting to kill this guy? Am I going to back up right after this Pact? And that's the beauty of it. So oftentimes the combination of pacting and pouncing is like really important. And I'm going to speak only from the pacting perspective. Generally what pacting is, like I said, it's that 2.5 second buffer, right? So whatever stage of the game you're in, I talked about what pacting is for. Is like in the mid game we talked about that if you walk into ward vision, you want to use it for like a way to gauge 2.5 seconds, like am I okay? And in the laning stage, it's also that same thing, but it's more of like a do I want to go on this guy or not kind of decision, rather than like am I just gonna die. And so pact pouncing is a great way to think about it. Towards the end of my pact, will I have to pounce? That's like your first gauge. Will I have to pounce at the end of my pact? You have that 2.5 seconds to decide. Pounce is simply meant to be, am I going in or am I getting out? That's basically what you're doing. And like if by the end of your pact, neither of those is the case, meaning like I don't have to go anywhere, like I'm not on top of a hero, like if you're just running around the map and you're in ward vision and then suddenly you see everybody so you don't feel in danger, then you don't pounce at all, right? But if you want to go in and you're in lane, you decide to go in with pounce, it's right at the end of pact, right? And if you want to get out, right as your pact is ending, meaning like in the last like, you know, half-second tick of it, you can use that to be guaranteed to get out. You know what I mean? You're not going to get disabled. Your pact is going to go off, and then your pounce is going to complete. So that's a great way to think about it. And then also the combination of that survivability when it comes to pact is, will pounce be enough? It's kind of like a chain reaction. Will the pounce after the pact be enough? If not, that's when you're going to have to ultimate. And like certain abilities that can be really obnoxious are the ones that force you to ultimate just because you're scared of them occurring. The ones that Pact does not remove or Pact Pounce is not enough for. Those are the ones that really get to you, and we'll talk about those, the ones you'll want to preemptively ultimate and all that stuff when I specifically talk about Shadow Dance in my Shadow Dance video. So this whole video concept is new to me, talking about an ability specifically, but I feel like my understanding of Slark is far greater than any other hero from my perspective. So I talked about in the laning stage that you want to harass with Pact. That is your harass. And we're going to be talking about why, you know, Pounce is such a bad addition of that. So when you look at Pact, I mentioned what it's already for. We mentioned the 3 purposes, what it does for you. And the point is, when it comes to team fighting, and when it comes to laning, when it comes to mid game, all stages of the game, all these are like different scenarios, right? But the point is, you have a 3.5 second window where you are vulnerable. And that is when you have to position yourself when you have Pact and when you don't. It's really that simple. For the most part, it's easiest to learn Slark by spamming Pact off cooldown whenever you're potentially in danger. In team fights, in the mid game, like the minute you're in ward vision, just spam Pact and take a second to think about it. You'll eventually be able to hone the times where you don't have to Pact. Like you're not quite in threat range, right? You're not like gonna die instantly. They don't have like instant long range stuns. Like I didn't have to Pact right there, kind of thing. But it's really hard to learn that you were supposed to Pact. So if you're ever in danger, why not Pact, right? It's a low cooldown, low mana cost. Like if you mess up, worst case scenario, you now have a 3.5 second downtime where you have to play a little bit more scared. And that's something that's much easier to learn from than not pacting and just dying. So I really like to think of it that way. And so I always think like in every game, what can I pact off? What do I have to make sure I pact off? Do I have to pact instantly? So what I mean by that, if I'm against a lion and I go on him and I don't pact instantly and I get hexed, I'm screwed. But if I go on something like, you know, a Vengeful Spirit or another support or a core that has a projectile stun, then I'll have time to react to that. So I can choose to like wait, you know, half a second or a second to pact once I go on those heroes. But if they have like an out of vision stun, something like an Earthshaker Fissure, that I can't afford to wait to pact. And that's like something really important to think, like how long can I afford to wait to pact? And it's like something where, you know, if you're not scared of anything, then it's really good to just pact right away because it's damage. But if you're scared of something and you know it's not instant, then that's maybe the best time to wait. to Pact, and that's because it just allows you to play aggressively that much longer. Generally, if you look at the timings of all of his abilities, where Pact has a 3.5 second downtime, Leash has an 8 second downtime, and his ult has 4 second duration. So a lot of times you can Pact, pounce in, and then you now have a 3.5 second duration where you don't have Pact, you ult, and then by the end of your ult you'll have Pact again. And so that's like a really great way to think of like how Pact can be used for the maximized damage, especially in the early to mid game fights, because a lot of early to mid game fights you're not tanky enough to just man up on people. You have really low stat gains and just an overall low base armor hero, so your fights will often just be composed of 2 packs, a pounce, and an ult, and a lot of times it's that similar order. And it's really good to think about like how the downtimes of Slark's abilities like line up with one another, and that's something you get a lot of feel for, but it's something to like really take note of. So some interesting points to make about Pact, other than the stuff that cannot be removed, is that it does instances of damage, right? It does them in 0.1 second intervals. So that means it applies to Slark and it also applies to enemies. So for instance, Slark will instantly Dark Pact tree living armor off of himself because of that. It also makes it so it serves as self-damage, so it will remove clarities, salves, regen runes, any form of regen that's now cancelled by self-damage. And it also does it to enemies, meaning that it deals damage over time. So if you Pact, you'll remove all of refraction charges because it deals 10 instances of damage, which is really nice. And it's just important to know that that's how the damage works for Pact, and to think about it in regards to anything that it will apply to. Those are the main things to think of for me, is all the regens, the urns. You can remove urn from yourself, and those are really the important ones. So that's really all I have to say about Pact, and I think that it's overall one of the most crazy abilities in the game. The fact that it can remove, for the most part, almost every stun in the game, and any just basic slow, as well as anything that deals damage over time to you. And it's just such a crazy ability to maximize, and I think people utilize it incredibly wrong. And I hope that this video has shed some light on how you would use Pact in the early to mid game, and I'm going to be talking about it in the next replay that I will be analyzing, just to really like show you how I use Pact in my games. And it's something that the goal of this video is to have you watch somebody like myself or some other Slark player play Slark and like pay attention closely to how they Pact. Every time they're in vision, they'll Pact. Every time they want to push out a creep wave, they'll Pact. Every time they lead off a kill, they will Pact. And it's just like, I want you guys to notice the use of Pact so that you can apply it to the fullest in your games as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and check out the rest of my ability guides on GameLoop.